ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. Namaskar my dear friends, this is video number 3 on Isha Upanishad. This video starts with verse number 5. It moves and moves not. It is far and likewise near. It is inside all this and it is outside all this. It moves, etc. Though by nature actionless, yet Atma appears to move in association with its upadhis, like the reflection of the sun in moving water. Far. For the ignorant who cannot realize Atma even in millions of years, near for the wise who knows it to be their inmost self, inside, because it is the essence of all, or because it is the omnipresent spirit subtle as Akasha. All this, that is to say, the universe characterized by name, form, and movement outside. Because Atma is all pervading, by associating Atma with contradictory attributes, the Upanishad indicates that it is really pure consciousness free from all attributes. One who is endowed with self knowledge loves all beings. Verse number 6. The wise man beholds all beings in the self and the self in all beings. For that reason he does not hate anyone. All beings, from the world soul, the highest cosmic manifestation, to the blade of grass, self. Other beings are not distinct from one's self. The spirit is one and indivisible. It is the names and forms superimposed by ignorance that create the apparent multiplicity. They are transitory and ultimately unreal. The self in all beings. This refers to pure consciousness, which is the inmost Atma of all embodied beings. Transcendental in itself, Atma is the witness of all acts of perception. One sees difference only in the physical and mental planes. Does not, etc. Hatred arises when one sees evil in something which is other than oneself, but the very root of hatred is destroyed when one sees Atma alone in oneself and others. The perception that pure consciousness is the essence and reality of all is the foundation of the golden rule. He who is firmly established in the perfect equality of Atma, Samtva, has overcome all repulsion, secretiveness, shrinking, dislike, fear, hatred, and other perverse traits which arise from the perception of separation. A man endowed with self-knowledge remains undisturbed by the outer manifestation of ugliness or beauty, strength or weakness, saintliness or sinfulness. He feels love and compassion for all and works for the welfare of all. His sympathy goes much deeper than that of the social reformer or philanthropist. The knower of the self overcomes grief and delusion. To the seer, all things have verily become the self. The knower of the self overcomes grief and delusion. Verse number 7. To the seer, all things have verily become the self. What delusion, what sorrow, what can there be for him who beholds that oneness? What delusion, etc. When, on account of ignorance, a person regards himself as a finite psychophysical entity and takes multiplicity to be real, he feels the desire to possess something in the outer world and acts to that end. He grieves when he loses what he loves or when he comes in contact with what he hates. But he who knows Atma to be blameless and pure and sees it as the essence of everything cannot be overwhelmed by grief or delusion. Both ignorance, avidya, and its effect, that is to say, multiplicity, are destroyed for the knower of Atma. This knowledge itself is liberation. The knower, though living in a body, is free from attachment and aversion, pain and pleasure, and the other pairs of opposites. The real nature of Atma. Verse number 8. It is He who pervades all, He who is bright and bodiless, without scar or sinews, pure and by evil unpierced, who is the seer, omniscient, transcendent, and uncreated. He has duly allotted to the eternal world creators their respective duties. Who pervades, etc. Brahma interpenetrates everything and pervades the phenomenal universe as fragrance pervades sandal paste. Bright refers to the luminosity of the pure self. Bodiless, without a subtle form, without scar, etc. Without any defect, Brahma is devoid of gross form. Pure, free from a causal body, by evil unpierced, uncontaminated by such limitations of Prakriti as dharma, righteousness, and adharma, unrighteousness. As a witness, he watches the modifications of Prakriti. He is not impressed or troubled by them. Seer, he sees all in detail as well as in its totality. Omniscient, the ruler of the mind, which is the organ of understanding. Transcendent, beyond all manifestations. Duly, that is to say, according to their past actions and spiritual evolution. The Vedas say that righteous human beings become gods after death and thus enjoy the result of their good work. They are generally placed in charge of the various cosmic functions. Brahma, as Rita or truth, controls all the activities of the relative world, eternal world, creators. They endure as long as the universe lasts but are not absolutely eternal like Brahma, which transcends time. World creators, various exalted cosmic beings such as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or the world may mean the creators of different universes. The last sentence of the text may be differently explained. He has ordered rightly all objects for all eternity. The unillumined person, in striving for a superior result, should combine action, rituals with meditation on a devata deity. The unsatisfactory result of pursuing one method alone is pointed out. Verse number 9. Into a blind darkness they enter who are devoted to ignorance, rituals. but into a greater darkness they enter who engage in knowledge of a deity alone. Blind darkness. It is characterized by an absence of knowledge because it is opposed to knowledge. Ignorance. The word avidya in the text signifies karma or ritualistic action such as the Agnihotra sacrifice. Greater darkness. The result of meditation on the deities without any ritual leads to a greater darkness. Knowledge. The word knowledge here means knowledge or contemplation of a deity. It does not signify supreme knowledge. The following interpretation of the text is adapted from Sankara's commentary. The first verse of the Isha Upanishad refers to devotion to the knowledge of Brahma through renunciation of all desires. The second verse lays down devotion to action, rituals for those who are ignorant, desirous of a long life on earth, and incapable of cultivating devotion to knowledge. This division into the two paths of knowledge and action has also been made in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The latter prescribes performance of action for persons devoid of self-knowledge and attached to desires. It further points out that lack of the higher knowledge and longing for material enjoyments incline one to devotion to action. The result of such action is identification of the self with various material objects such as the body, the senses, and the mind, which entangles one in samsara. On the contrary, according to the same Upanishad, the knower of the self through renunciation of wife, offspring, and so on cultivates detachment from action and shows devotion to knowledge. What shall we achieve through children? We who have attained this self, this world. The third verse of the Isha Upanishad condemns ignorant people and verses 4 to 8 disclose the true nature of Atma for those sannyasis who are devoted to the knowledge of Brahman. People who cherish desires are not qualified to cultivate that knowledge. The Svetasvatara Upanishad states the sacred self knowledge prized by the assembly of rishis was taught only to those who belong to the highest order of sannyasi. The ninth verse refers to those who are devoted to work and want to perform it as long as they live. It may be asked how one can know that this verse refers to them only and does not lay down a universal law to be applied to all. The answer is that a desireless person, as stated in verse 7, overcomes the illusory distinction between the means and the ends of actions. This is because of his attainment of the knowledge of Atma, which does not admit of any distinctions. This knowledge cannot be harmonized by anyone except a fool with karma or with any other kind of knowledge, that is to say, knowledge of a deity. Verse 9 condemns ignorant people with a view to harmonizing work with the knowledge of a deity. Work can be harmonized with such knowledge both through reason and on scriptural authority. That harmonization is suggested in this verse. The knowledge of a deity which is to be combined with work cannot be the knowledge of Atma, for the former enables one to attain Devaloka, the plane of the deities, whereas the latter gives one liberation. But the knowledge of a deity can very well be harmonized with the performance of action. Such harmonization is the real purport of the text and not condemnation either of the worship of a deity or of the performance of action, for both the work and the worship produce their appropriate results. Both are prescribed by the scriptures and therefore cannot be unworthy of being pursued. Those who are devoted to ignorance, that is to say, to work, enter into darkness which is characterized by an absence of light. Here, ignorance, avidya, is work, because the latter is opposed to knowledge, vidya. Those who devote themselves to such a ritual as the Agnihotra enter into darkness, into a greater darkness, and enter those who renounce work and engage in the knowledge of a deity alone. The fruits of both knowledge and work are separately mentioned in order to harmonize knowledge and work. Otherwise, the one which was without fruit would be a mere appendage of the one bearing fruit, and in that case, no harmony would be possible. Or the text may mean that there are people who through conceit give up work though they are not entitled to do so. They are mere theorists. Some of them indulge in the pursuit of occult knowledge about various deities and neglect the ordinary duties prescribed by religion. They fall victims to greater nescience. According to a third interpretation, the word Vidya in the text means only the theoretical knowledge of Brahma obtained from study of scripture. Those who are endowed with such knowledge are certainly less fortunate than the ritualist because the latter enjoy some kind of reward whereas the former obtain nothing at all. A fourth interpretation of the text is that those who perform ritualistic action go after death to a lower heaven called Pitriloka, and after reaping there the result of their action, quickly come back to earth and resume the thread of their spiritual evolution. But those who are devoted to the contemplation of a deity go after death to Devaloka, the plane of the deities, Chandraloka, or the plane of the moon. There they dwell a long time enjoying intense material pleasure. Those who come back from the lower heaven perhaps quickly realize the transitory nature of material pleasures. But those dwelling in the higher heaven, deluded by the enjoyment of more intense pleasures, remain oblivious of the final spiritual goal for a longer time. The The different results of knowledge, vidya and action, avidya. Verse number 10. One thing they say is obtained from knowledge, another they say from ignorance. Thus we have heard from the wise who have taught up this, who have taught us this. One thing, that is to say, the plane of the deities, another, etc. The plane of fathers, Pitriloka. This, both rituals and knowledge of the deities. The instruction given in this verse has come down through a succession of teachers. Though verse 10 has described separate results for work and for meditation on a deity, yet the real aim of the Upanishad seems to be their harmonization, which is described in the following verse. In order to emphasize this harmonization work or ritualistic action and meditation on a deity without appropriate ritualistic action pursued separately have been condemned in verse 9. When anything laid down by the scriptures meets elsewhere with scriptural disapproval, the real purpose is not the condemnation of the thing in question but the glorification of something else. Verse number 11. He who is aware that both knowledge and ignorance should be pursued together, overcome death through ignorance and obtain immortality through knowledge. Death, the action and knowledge natural to an unillumined person, are here called death. Such a person does not see anything beyond the sense perceived world. Ignorance, that is to say, ritualistic actions, which reveal to their performers the other planes of existence not pursued by the senses. Immortality, the relative immortality enjoyed by the gods in Devaloka. Absolute immortality or deathlessness is not possible without self knowledge. The text is obscure. It seems, according to verse 10, that those who contemplate a deity without harmonizing their contemplation with action go after death to Devaloka and dwell there till the result of their good action is exhausted, and those who perform ritualistic action go to Pitriloka to enjoy the results of their actions. According to verse 11, it appears that those who harmonize both attain in the end the status of a deity and dwell in the heavenly world as long as the cycle lasts, enjoying as gods what is called relative immortality. In order to harmonize the worship of the unmanifested Prakriti with that of the manifested Hiranyagarbha, the worship of the one without the other is condemned. Verse number 12. Into a blind darkness they enter who worship only the unmanifested Prakriti, but into a greater darkness they enter who worship the manifested Hiranyagarbha, blind darkness. In that state, the light of Brahma is not perceived at all, because it then remains under the spell of Maya. Unmanifested Prakriti, the state of non-manifestation prior to the creation of names and forms, when the three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, remain in equilibrium. The disturbance of this equilibrium precipitates creation. This state of non-manifestation balance is known by such names as avidya, nescience, avakrita, unmanifested, and agyana, ignorance. It is the state between two cycles and contains in an unmanifested form, hence the name unmanifested Prakriti, all the good and evil tendencies and desires of the living beings of the past cycle which determine the lives of those to be born in the next. Manifested Hiranyagarbha, the first manifestation of Brahma in the relative universe. At the beginning of a cycle, he is produced from the unmanifested Prakriti and hence is called the manifested Hiranyagarbha. The different results of their worship are described in order to bring about their harmonization. I conclude this video here. Next video number 4 will start with verse number 13. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment and share the video. Subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar.